Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying!
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast and the main podcast on a Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Happy Wednesday. Listen to us. Happy Wednesday. No, happy Thursday. You're out of luck. We are back. We are back with the boys. We're all in white again. I don't quite know what. Is this the sort of the reverse funeral situation? Arsenal doing well? We're trying
or we just don't do our laundry.
Yeah.
We just don't wash.
Keeping the gimmick up. Back here with Rohan and George to break down all the topics that you want to hear about this week to do with Arsenal. We do have a little request from producer MJ. Please turn on your notifications. We realise we don't have loads of you who have your notifications turned on. So if you're listening to us on YouTube, I think you can have notifications on Spotify and Apple as well, but certainly on YouTube, please stick us on your notifications. With so much to get into, lads, we're in the good times. We are in the good times. I saw a clip of someone earlier on, and I won't name names, but people probably know who it is. And his bit was basically, well, we haven't won the title, and, you know, we've been here before, so let's not enjoy it. And Rohan, get out of here.
Yeah, why are you at the game? Why are you at the game?
Just come back in May then. I'm enjoying it. I'm
exactly.
really enjoying this season. Talk to me.
And that's where I can kick off with the word of the day.
Oh, here we go. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Word of the day is...
Transitions.
That was perfect. Now, I've mentioned this quite a few times on X. It's sanguine.
I've heard you say that.
Is how you pronounce it.
Yeah. And in a sentence, I would say I am feeling rather sanguine about the potential outcome of Arsenal's 25-26 Premier League campaign.
Bleeding neck. For those of you who, I think you've given that as a word of the day before, but I'll let it slide. For those of us who don't know what that means, Rohan, could you give us a definition?
Feeling positive, optimistic.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, there's lots to get into. I'm just, look, we're top of the league. Liverpool are in crisis. I don't care if it's been 3 games. This is a deep crisis, and they really need to worry. And that is genuinely my opinion. We got obviously the new Timber and Saliba contracts. We've got Ange failing. Apart from the new a couple of injuries, George, we're in the good times. Good times.
Yeah, and it wasn't too long ago that we were in the nervy times either. I think when you go back, that's the way it swings about. It's good. It's good to be a fan, and there's not a lot of times that we get to enjoy this part either. I will say, because I think that until we end up doing the thing that we all want to do, we all won't let ourselves fully go in there, and there's that hesitancy. Some people are a little bit more on the spectrum of don't celebrate till May, and some people are like, I think this is our year. But then I am really cognizant that, you know, a surprise result is gonna get those feelings of, okay, let me look back at our chance creation numbers. Let me look back at X, Y, and Z. Let me make sure that the patterns that I'm seeing aren't, you know, a blip. And it's kind of the state of play for us until we arrive. But there is reason to be excited. And when you mentioned the contracts, for me, the club seems to be in a point of takeoff, broadly speaking. Whether we do this or not this season, you look at just the broad scope of what we've been able to do off the back of that summer transfer window, where a lot of things seem to change, right? Then you're building now, and one of your major players that every single team in world football would die to have. In fact, Madrid went on a nearly year-long offensive trying to convince William Saliba to do the thing that Konate and Trent can't do. And it is a case where, as an Arsenal fan, you've got to sit back and look at your history. Just because he's been a fan and hasn't won here, I don't buy that's the only reason he hasn't left. I mean, we're talking about a club that, unfortunately, I don't want to open up old wounds, but a lot of people left, including people that have won with us, including fans of our own. I look at Ashley Cole and how that entire situation was handled. It is not enough to be a fan to assume that you're going to stay at a club, especially when Madrid call. And I think that news is huge. You build off the back of what Timber's doing. You build off the back of what this squad looks to be, the amount of injuries that we've had. I really don't think that we've had a difference to our injury situation from last year. There is a big difference in terms of how we're approaching games. There is a big difference in terms of some of the actual creativity metrics that we're talking about through central progression. None of this stuff has been a given, and I'm just seeing little steps forward that I think has maybe gone amok in terms of the overall trajectory of the club, because we really are, guys, just waiting for that liftoff period. And I think people are associating the liftoff with a 5-0 against a really big opponent. But to me, I'm looking back at all of these small steps and I'm thinking, wow, I love that the international break has come, but this club and this team is looking towards liftoff. And I think we're really nearly there.
And this is kind of where I wanted to start the show. So it's a lovely little segue, because I think, Rohan, like, the reason I'm feeling so positive, and probably just going off the back of what George said there about the sort of the 5-0, the sort of the big moment, is we've never been that far away. Like, we really haven't. It's been tiny margins. It's been, you know, you can boil it down to that Trossard kick or that Saka miss in the PSG game, whatever it might be. But we've all known, whatever your opinion, you know, you look at the point, I think we picked up more points than Man City and Liverpool in the last 3 years put together, still not won a Premier League title. Even the staunchest Mikel Arteta out, I hate this guy, get out of my club type man or type supporter would say, could not argue basically that we've been that far away. And we've seen tiny shifts, but the shifts we have seen are both sustainable and the things that we needed to see. We've seen the squad depth improve, obviously, in the summer. We've seen, little things that we were looking at last season in terms of the central access, in terms of over a larger sample, and we're beginning to see it now, which was a question a couple of weeks about, the chance creation. We're seeing our quality against mid-blocks. All the things that we were in the squad, the rotation, all those little things that, ended up being massive, but, were little, objectively little things that were holding us back, appear to be on their way to being solved. Yes, it's still a small sample size. Yes, we're still at the beginning of the season. But again, it's the specific, it's specifically our issues. And those, as George was saying, we're never going to be massive, oh my goodness me, this is a huge shift. It's going to be a substitute that causes something that does happen last year, that doesn't happen this year. It's a little bit more access to the middle, which leads to a goal, which, yes, happens from a cross or whatever, but happened because of a bit of central access. No one's going to wake up and go, oh my God, Arsenal are suddenly brilliant and suddenly going to win the title, because we've been brilliant. It's these little things. And I think this is why I'm so excited and why I feel it is sustainable. That's the word I keep coming back to. This feels sustainable. And finally, as well, we've still got Gabby Jesus to come back, Kai Havertz to come back, Noni Madueke to come back, Pierre Nkapia we haven't even seen in an Arsenal shirt. So, look, there are going to be issues this season. We're going to be sat here after certain games going, oh, is it all over? But that's why I'm so positive, is because it is the specific issues that we had that feel like they've been addressed in some way.
Absolutely. And I think, the most important aspect to look at when we're thinking about a large sample sizes, as you just alluded to, with the 3-year sample that we have of Arsenal accumulating more points than anybody else in the league. So then you think back and analyse it, and like you said, the staunchest of Mikel Arteta haters or outers surely have to acknowledge the fact that this is sustained consistency over 3 years. That's 38 games times 3, and like, the numbers don't lie. Arsenal are in a very good place, and that's why you can look at it through a lot of different angles. Where George is talking about Saliba, you can look at all of our key assets. It's not necessarily normal for a player to be in, I would say, 2 title challenges. I don't think last season was a title challenge personally, because the conditions and what we faced didn't allow for that to happen. But you've gone 2 seasons of, sustaining a title challenge, and you've not been able to get over the line. It's not normal for players to still have that belief and that optimism that they're going to be able to still do it within this project. But the evidence is right there in front of you in terms of us being able to retain our key assets to long-term deals. And I think every Arsenal fan, most Arsenal fan, rates this squad really highly, and each individual, a lot of players who are world-class. And if you have that rating for X, Y, and Z, you have to rate the manager as well, because these guys believe in the manager, and a lot of these players could play for any club in the world, any club, and that's why I think it's a really good time to be an Arsenal fan, because not just the performances, but what we're seeing in the background. And actually, it goes back to last season, right, when we talked about what is the biggest driver as to why Arsenal weren't able to achieve their goals. It was the injuries. This season, we have sustained injuries, but we've been able to mitigate it because of the unprecedented window that we had in the summer that was based around one word, in my opinion, that is contingency. Foreseeing events that could happen that we can't control. I don't know if you guys have seen this, and George will know a lot more about this being in that field and having the knowledge there, but there was a piece from the Financial Times that looked at the Premier League from 2004 all the way till now, and not a lot has changed, but the number of sprints and the intensity has increased by above 60%. Adoni Iraola last year, well, I think actually early this year, mentioned explicitly how he was playing in 2003, and he said there's not a lot that's changed in terms of tactically and the ideas. The ideas have always been there. You can go through research and study teams in the past, but what's changed is the game is a lot faster and the physical demands have increased. And that's why this window, we were burned by it last season with the injuries we had. We've gone into that window, we've looked to mitigate the effect of certain players going down, and you've just mentioned a lot of top quality players there, and here we are sitting with a point tally. When you compare it to the last 3 seasons, we are above the 22-23 campaign, we're above the 23-24 campaign, and we're above last season by 5 points in similar fixtures. And we've not even hit our peak yet. Players are still bedding in, they're settling in. That's why I think it's a really good time to be an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, just to give those numbers that we mentioned earlier. So Arsenal over the last 3 Premier League seasons have picked up 264 points. Man City have picked up 263 points, but they've picked up obviously 2 Premier League titles, and we've picked up, to remind you, 0. And Liverpool have picked up 249 points, 15 behind us, and have picked up 1. Yeah, it's incredibly sustainable, and for many of the reasons that you mentioned. I think another point, just to briefly mention before we move on to something else, I do think not only is it the squad depth that we have that makes me excited about this being sustainable, but it's also the way we play. Like, I think because we control the game, I know we've been frustrated by that a lot. If we have a squad that can deal with that, I think physically, based on those numbers you've given in terms of the sprints and the intensity of games, Arsenal can compete, and especially in Arsenal that has been bolstered in this way. I think towards the end of the season, I think we're going to be hitting our stride, and I actually don't even feel like we've necessarily hit our peak right now, which is really exciting. Let me come to you, George. We'll talk more about the sort of the title race in general. Firstly, actually, to get your take on sort of Liverpool and where they're at as well, sort of in their process, but also to say, obviously, Liverpool have been the name put next to us, and I believe they will be there till the end, and probably be definitely will be our biggest challengers. But there are other names up there. There's Spurs who are 3rd, Bournemouth who are 4th, Palace are 6th. I don't think we can totally discount them. Chelsea are around there, Man City with Erling Haaland in the form he's in. So yeah, the title race in general. Thoughts on Liverpool, but also thoughts on, is there anyone else that you look at and say, let's keep an eye on them?
There's a lot of teams that I respect, but are just far too young in their infancy of their project. Like, I look at Thomas Frank and the type of manager that I personally rate him to be, and what I know he's capable of, and I just think it's too soon kind of in his own process to really expect a consistent title charge. But he's somebody that's capable of changing a team and implementing his ideas. I even look at Newcastle in terms of Nick Woltemade, in terms of his start to the Premier League season and what he's able to do to help that attack connect a little bit more. And all Newcastle have ever really needed was a little bit more potency in front of goal to provide their already very strong defensive record to actually start to mount something more serious, as far as being 2 teams that I think are kind of, dark horses in a sense that people don't necessarily consider as complete. I think are near enough to that. I look at Areola in terms of Bournemouth, and I think that this is a manager that's really exciting, really promising, and what he's doing with Bournemouth is something that you can't ignore. But there's also a lot to be said for his ability to do that off the back of essentially replacing his whole back line as well. And so there's a lot of interesting teams, but again, all of them have the caveats of being really infant in terms of their own projects. I mean, you look at the Areola point, this is a new backline. It's very, very early in the season to start to talk about these things. You look at Thomas Frank in terms of his ability to really sit there. He's had some really impressive performances, but in terms of any kind of sustained performance at the top level, there's a question mark in terms of his ability to translate Brentford's consistency to a top 6 consistency into a team that has plagued consistency for the entirety of their history. That's one thing. And then you look at Newcastle, and I think that Newcastle have been asked to title challenge for the last 3 to 4 years, and their ownership has almost demanded it, but they haven't quite been able to do it, despite doing some really interesting things in the league. And I'm looking at, Arsenal and the title race as a whole, and I just have a feeling that there's a lot of teams that are interesting, but have, the start of their project. And that's one thing that, Arsenal had going into the season that actually maybe we didn't do enough of a good job about highlighting in terms of the stability of the team and the core. In terms of what we've seen, it's been used as a stick to beat Arsenal with, especially because we haven't won anything. But fundamentally, you're looking at a team that is, well, as much as people want to, clown it, is well into their process, is well into their identity in terms of knowing how to play, what to play, and how to do it. And we are a team that's been together for more than 3 years. at that point, especially with a core. And I don't know if I really know that. Even with our closest rivals, look at Liverpool and everything that's gone on there. I have highlighted personally Liverpool's ability to spot runners in the blind side as a really significant weakness since Arne Slot's come in. I think it's seeing kind of that translation in these games, but fundamentally they've changed who they are from last season. They've had a real different attacking revolution. I don't know how long it'll take to really find the balance in there, but Arne Slot found the balance very early and relied on that balance to win him the league. And that balance isn't there. So to me, I've always felt like there was going to be a stress on Liverpool. And, they are an example of a team that has changed their spine quite significantly, especially with Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think the way that the forwards are getting their passes is completely different, let alone the makeup of those forwards and who's finishing them. So it's, again, another example of a team, as much as people don't want to admit it, is quite infant in their own eyes. I mean, Arne Slot kind of won them the league off the back of, Klopp's squad. This is the first time that we're looking at his imprint of how he views spaces and things like those things. So it is very interesting. I just look at us as probably the most consistent and the team with the longest core available. And while I have theories about people that could crop up and surprise us, I do think this title race could be one of surprise. And we could see a Bournemouth, a Newcastle, an unknown team, even Palace. I mean, I don't want to ignore their incredible form, especially with Oliver Glasner. I think he's got something like the second loss or something like in 2025. Like, this is a guy that's been performing with Palace for over 6 months. Yeah. So I do think actually that this title race could produce new challengers in a sense. And I don't think it's just a given that Liverpool are going to be the only ones. I think we'll have a rotating third challenger that I'm still evaluating, taking notice of, to be honest.
Yeah, I buy that. I think there might be sort of pretenders for that sort of third slot. I mean, Rohan, just quickly on Liverpool before we move on to the sort of the West Ham game and stuff. It is interesting what's going on with them because with the amount of money they've spent, and I don't want to be reductive here, but with the amount of money they've spent, how can they be in transition? Kind of are. Like, it's a bizarre situation to be in. And I was talking actually to my friend Andy, who's a Liverpool fan today, and he was highlighting various things for them, and but we ended up talking about Luis Diaz and the sort of the work out of possession that's been done. He was talking about Canate's form, which has been all over the shop. Obviously, the Trent miss is a big miss, and sort of the miss in terms of how they have to change how they create chances, obviously, where Salah's receiving the ball. There's lots of moving parts, and that's why, again, when you compare it to us, I think I feel more confident. And also, specifically at centre back, if they get an injury, they're in a very difficult situation, and we are not. So I think, it's I don't know. It's nice to be in this position, I guess.
And it's nice after the second international break, the focus is not on us, because the last international break, it was on the back of that Szoboszlai, Bobby Dazzler. I think with Liverpool, I think both things can be true. Like, they're in transition because of the number of change they've had, but at the same time, there should absolutely be the pressure for them to win the Premier League title, to retain. Yeah. Equally, there should be the pressure for Man City to win it. Equally, there should be the pressure for Arsenal to win it when we're looking at it from a pure expenditure point of view. Liverpool, now, I think if we look at their start to the season so far, now, I think it's been really interesting discourse where we've looked at the manner of their wins, and effectively they've had the final 10 minutes of each game pretty much in which they've needed a goal. And there's the discourse around, is it luck? Is it just what champions do? And what I've always felt where Liverpool scoring clutch goals in the final 10 minutes isn't entirely lucky. It's through sustained pressure. If you keep knocking on the door, push comes to shove, you will eventually find inroads and you will create big chances, even in the final 10 minutes of games. And the opposition, as it gets closer and closer to that final whistle, that anxiety creeps in, and Liverpool have been able to capitalise on it a lot. However, I've always felt that there has to be an element of regressing to the mean, just like in anything in football. I feel Liverpool, and my hypothesis was that they were overperforming in that regard. Not necessarily lucky, but the amount of times they kept getting winners, I thought, this is happening far too often. I don't believe that if they are in that environment where they need a goal to win the game, the last 10 minutes, It's not going to keep happening. And you've seen it against Galatasaray. You've seen it against Chelsea as well. There has to be an aspect of regressing to the mean. I feel like you are starting to see that, and it's not paying dividends for them. Now, the counter to that is, like you both alluded to, there's a lot of moving parts. Changing from Trent to Frimpong is not only a massive difference from a quality perspective, but it's a massive difference in the role. You're talking about Trent being that Toni Kroos-esque quarterback, facing play outside the block, pinging passes, long balls, short balls, etc., versus Frimpong, who is an out-and-out wing-back. And then you've got big money purchases on Ekitike, Isak, Havertz. You've got the Konate situation. There's a lot of things that are happening there, and that's why I think, for me, they will be there, but we now need to be the protagonists of this title race, because our next set of fixtures relative to Liverpool, in which they are having these teething issues, we could really pull away potentially, and that's the kind of like question mark I give to this Arsenal team. Can you now go after the international break against Fulham away from home, Palace, Sunderland, Burnley? Can you win all 4? Can you do that? Because if you win all 4, I guarantee you it'll be more than a point or 2 points, whatever it is right now.
Yeah, and I think really before we come to the West Ham game, just to close this out, I think certainly what I'm saying is there is a sustainability going on here, and I think that's the really exciting part. And we felt sustainability in many, many different areas, and that we don't see at other clubs for a long time. But now it is beginning to show up in the results in a slightly different way, while others are having their own issues, which I think has been another thing. Is sometimes we've been really sustainable, but somebody else has been really sustainable at the same time. And we're now looking at, we're top on expected goal difference, we're top on expected goals allowed, we're 4th for XG. And when you consider where we've been, I think that's pretty good, and we've climbed that table. We're 1st for points per match. We're 2nd for goals scored when you consider the form that Erling Haaland is in. If you take him out, this is when we look around all the stuff we discussed, the squad, the injury situation, whatever, how we're playing, lots to be excited about. Let's get into West Ham a little bit more specifically then. We are speaking a couple of days after, but I think there's some stuff to chat about after the game. First and foremost, Rohan, the lineup, which was a very un-Mikel Arteta lineup. Declan Rice, Eberechi Eze, still trying to get that right, apologies. I think it's Eberechi Eze, apologies. And Martin Odegaard, obviously, was forced off. Talk to us about that, because you all know better than me. When was the last time we did that in terms of the two dual 10s? Tell me.
Actually, we did it against Port Vale, technically.
Yes.
But, we did it. I remember we did it against Palace, the 2-2. If you remember back in 21-22, the last minute Lacazette goal. To get the equaliser. That was with Smith Rowe and Odegaard. Yeah, sure. We also did it against Sheffield United, where we beat them 5-0. Smith Rowe and Odegaard as well in that game. But it's not been something that has been common under Mikel. And I actually do think that there's a lot more to this than we may potentially think. Now, I think going into the game, you have to read the opposition. You have to read the intentions of what West Ham are going to go and do in this game. West Ham were never going to come and play through the lines. This was going to be a game which they're going to go very direct, long. It's going to be a game. It's going to be a loose ball game for West Ham, in which they hope that they can latch onto a second ball and they can build something then. They're not going to try and play through our press. And that's why I thought Mikel read this really well, because this isn't going to be a pressing game. Pressing, I think, in general, tends to be quite frowned upon, when we talk about the online discourse, where why is there so much emphasis on pressing? Why is there not more emphasis on creating, in open play? But actually, pressing is probably one of the best ways to create chances, because the opposition are, in that moment, they're trying to play through you versus you who are trying to win the ball back. If you win the ball back, the opposition are not in an optimal shape to defend that situation, because certain spaces are going to be left open versus if they were in more of a settled block. So for me, that's why I felt, from Mikel's perspective, this was never going to be a pressing game, because West Ham were not going to allow us to do that, because they're going to go long. So he felt, let's add an extra creator between the lines to unlock the door, because that's the game that West Ham were going to do. And I really like that from Mikel, because he's understanding certain games. You don't need the press to be as effective, because it's not going to be necessary, because the opposition aren't going to allow for it. And I felt in the first 30 minutes, it's a really small sample size because we didn't get to see much of it, right? We created a couple of big opportunities. I don't think we can read too much into it because, like I said, they only played for 30 minutes. But I liked what I saw. But then he made the Zubamendi change, and I know I'm waffling on a bit, but I think it's really interesting. And some of the quotes that I saw from Mikel afterwards, he said, and this was Art de Rocher who asked that question, and Mikel said, in response to why he picked Zubimendi instead of, I don't know, Waneri, for example, he said, with the way that they acted, West Ham, of course, and the way that they were matching our midfield, the spaces that we could create with Zubimendi, he felt were better. And also he added that West Ham had no intention to play. Like I said, they tried to bypass our first and second lines of our pressure with long balls, and then it became a game of second balls from West Ham's perspective. So he felt Zubimendi gives more insurance in that regard. So the way I see this is when he's talking about matching the midfield, so you have Füllkrug and Paqueta, right? And in their 4-4-2 block, they weren't putting pressure on our centre-backs. So Füllkrug pressed Gabriel, instead of Paqueta then jumping onto Saliba to back that up and press both centre-backs, Paqueta would still stay on Rice. He would still stay on Rice, and Bowen would then tuck in on Calafiori, who was inverted, who was initially occupied by Füllkrug. And then our two number 8s in Eze and Ødegaard are man-marked by their two central midfielders. So West Ham put all the emphasis on marking our midfield, including Calafiori, who was inverting. So he felt with Zubimendi, that is someone who's fantastic at being able to find space, move laterally. His positioning is fantastic. We saw the line-breaking passes that he was playing, but also the second balls that he gave us that insurance as well, where I felt we were doing more of the second balls anyway without Zubimendi, with Rice in the back line. But I think from Mikel's perspective, he felt, okay, I'm going to get the on-the-ball quality anyway from Zubimendi, So why not add the fact that he's fantastic with the second balls? That further compounds why I should go with him, because he gives me the best of both worlds. And that's what we saw. So I found it interesting in the lineup and how Mikel, picked a lineup with anticipating the game that West Ham were going to play. And then when the Ødegaard injury happened, he could have easily went with the dual 10s on paper again. But he felt with Zubimendi, it just makes sense to now go with that change because he gives the best of both worlds anyway. So yeah, bit long-winded, but... Yeah.
No, it was really good. And I think this is something we spoke about actually on Thursday, that the behaviour of the opposition is a big consideration for coaches. And I think this is a big thing that probably we misunderstand as fans, that actually they're not just thinking about us. We're just thinking about us and going, why aren't we playing this player or that player? They're thinking about where's he stood, where's the spaces and stuff. I think and ultimately we saw the result when Zubimendi came on the pitch, and we saw how good we looked and how good he looked. So I think there's something there. George, I guess another version of this, another version of, say Ødegaard had stayed on the pitch, we would be speaking about another brilliant mid-block game where we kind of have broken down another mid-block team and, so have found different solutions. It didn't quite work out with Ødegaard, but we did find different solutions. And we are, as you said on the instant reaction, 3 for 3 in these games so far this season. Something I said on the instant reaction, which I think I've changed my mind on since, was I wasn't sure on the day around... Ultimately, if you're building a system and your fullbacks are kind of the people giving you the thrust, especially in these sorts of situations, and they're getting a lot of touches and they're getting a lot of shots off, etc., etc. We've said many times about Calafiori being, having second most shots in the team or whatever. And yes, that's slightly him as a profile, but it's also the positions he's picking up. I sort of felt post-game, I don't love it. Look, it's 2-0, like we're not going to have that conversation. Do we feel this is the fullback usage, basically is what I'm getting at, is one of the ways we're shifting these mid-blocks this season? Because I am seeing a really aggressive use of the fullbacks, but also just a really aggressive use of the spaces in general. And I think I saw you talk about this earlier on. And I completely agree with you that there is a different approach. There is a different risk factor. There's the sort of the sense of the team that we've all felt for a long time is maybe just a little bit... Actually, I'm going to recycle in that moment. A lot of it, yes, is the fullback usage, but it's the decision-making, finding these players willing to carry into those spaces, actually take those risks and so on. Thoughts on that, and thoughts on sort of how we've approached mid-blocks in general, because we do appear to have had a bit of a shift.
So when you want to kind of create space and maximize your space, I look at our issues of the mid-block, let's call it like a square problem. And in mathematics, when you extend the length and the width at the same time as you do with a square, you now get a circle in very basic geometry terms. We all know about this. And what the circle gives you as opposed to a square is a much larger...
But yes.
Well, okay, maybe, but this is like if you do it at the same time, you make a circle, right? Yeah. And the whole idea between the difference between having a circle's area versus a square's area is that you're getting a much larger degree radius. And so very, very simply, as a team, how a team can vertically stretch and horizontally stretch the pitch is going to be your solution for how much area you can cover, how much area you can attack with. And I've seen a really big mentality shift in our intentions about how we're doing those things that I felt last year didn't have the timing completely correct. We flat out didn't do it in certain scenarios. And it led to us having the same square of attacking intent. Whereas now, with us stretching the pitch vertically and horizontally with a lot more consistency, and at the same time, crucially, you're expanding your area to attack at the same time, as opposed to just one focused area. How we do that, we can talk about the fullbacks. You've talked about it a little bit there. And the question in terms of leading it, how we end up achieving these things, I think are twofold. Our receivers are a lot more fluid in their movement. I don't see the same rigidity in terms of them waiting to receive certain balls in the same way. That's the first thing. That's kind of the horizontal stretch and a little bit of the vertical. They come at the same time. They're not isolated. But we've seen, Saka switching sides. We've seen players more willing to go on the overlap. Of course, we've seen Gyökeres in terms of his stretching, but look at how Madueke attacks space and how vertical he's able to do so. It's not just one player, but we've really seen an intent to both vertically and horizontally stretch teams. That's vital, number one. Then what's secondary to that, when you talk about how we're doing it, and we're talking about our use of the fullbacks, we have even yet to see the Ben White and the Capier versions of this with enough frequency. But we've seen the Timber and the Calafiori versions. And I think Calafiori in particular is a very unique one because I actually feel he has been more of a quarterback than people think. Where you look at Zubamendi, he's been our tempo setter. Calafiori has been our chaos orchestrator. And he is somebody that in these last 7 games has picked up areas of the pitch and gained more influence than I think people believe in terms of his ability to break games. And if Zubamendi's the pass first breaker from deep, the change has been, it's not Rice that we're relying to do so in the high 8 anymore. It is Calafiori. And that specific change, I think, has opened up where we're receiving, where we end up quite a bit more. And the one thing I spoke on the instant reaction, my one frustration with the carrying is not so much that it's Calafiori doing that from deep, it's that we don't end that carry with our attacker being the one to shoot with enough frequency. And that's the one thing we maybe need to tweak. But as far as opening teams up, this is just a brilliant way to do it. And I don't I think it's unique because not a lot of other teams have this kind of quality at fullback and they don't use it. Calafiori's not alone. I won't relitigate what we said about Timber and his movement this season. But Calafiori in particular, there really is very little fullbacks like him in world sport. And I really am uncomfortable calling him a fullback. Like that shot that he takes, by the way, the technique to do that shot.
Wrong foot. And guys, this isn't the first time the Man City goal. I remember United where he hits the post while we're searching for a goal. I believe it was 1-1.
Does it against Forest as well? No.
Does it against Forest? This is a pattern at this point. Like, okay, first time, shame on me. Second time, shame on you. And it's one of those things where he is becoming the source of inspiration for a lot of the chaos. And for a team that's quite regimented, he's a very Liverpool player in a very City-like model. And that balance is what Mikel highlights when he talks about his post-match conferences. And it's about understanding that chaos merchant a little bit better. Because I think we've all searched for it. And I think people are uncomfortable with the position title on his FIFA card. But if we look at what he actually instigates on the pitch, we all want more of it. We all want more Maverick. And we're looking at Nani Madueke to provide things like that. We're looking at different players to provide that Maverick. But I think that's the most important thing in this little rant, where you need to look at how we as a team are stretching teams both vertically and horizontally at the same time with a lot more frequency. And when you're looking at the players to do so, I think Calafiori's intentions on how to attack those spaces are why we see him thrive in that way.
Yeah, I think I like Liverpool player in a City system. That's nice. That's a nice way of putting it. And I think I think maybe the outcome that you sort of refer to there in terms of Calafiori's getting shots off or Timber's getting shots off and they're the guys in the box having those final actions. That's maybe the thing to tweak, as you say. But Rohan, I think the exciting part is those kind of, whether it's the dual inside fullbacks stepping up into the box, or we haven't even seen it yet with Ben White and Nkapie, and we'll have a very, very different approach in those senses, whether it's Gyökeres with his gravity, whether it's Zubamendi finding more central spaces, whether it's Eze taking shots. We're finding different ways of breaking teams down and new dynamics based, wherever you look in the team, like really wherever you look in the team. Even Leandro Trossard's role this season has been a different way of breaking down spaces. So, yeah, as George puts it, in a sort of stretching and vertically and horizontally, but I think you can look around and see a lot of different solutions to find space in dangerous areas and create moments. And I don't have the numbers to hand, but over a larger sample size, I'd love to see, chances created versus the West Hams, the Newcastles, the Fulhams, etc. And it's why I'm not too worried about, in a couple of weeks, going to Fulham and going, yeah, we've got a solution for you guys. In fact, we've got 3 or 4 new solutions.
Yeah, we've got so many different ways to attack teams. And like Nuno said it brilliantly after the match. He's like, why are Arsenal so good? He says, well, firstly, they've had a lot of time together. And that's totally fair. We've had a lot of time together.
It's completely valid.
Yeah, it's a completely valid. But at the same time, it's been the right thing to do to give this team time and to give this manager time, because we go all the way back to the raw numbers and the data. 3 seasons, Arsenal have accumulated the most points out of any other team. So it is absolutely right that we've been given this opportunity to have the time. And like, I saw a comp that was going around about, Mikel Arteta's build-up against West Ham, and I'm looking at it and thinking, I can predict what sequence is going to happen next. It's all intuitive because these players have been coached to a very, very strong standard. And the Calafiori aspect, and this is where I go back to that point about freedom, and does Mikel restrict freedom? And I really disagree with it so much, because when I look at Calafiori, to the way that he was playing at Bologna, to the way he's playing at Arsenal, I don't see a different player. I see the exact same player doing the things that he was, showered with praise for Italy.
Especially this season.
Absolutely, yeah, and I feel
we didn't see him. That's the problem.
And this is the point I really want to stress as well. So, we all know how good Calafiori is. We've been showering him with immense praise from the moment he's came to the football club. So, what I've seen this season, what you two have seen this season, is not a shock to you. What the shock is for me is the fact that we've had 10 games now in all competitions. Calafiori's been available for every single game. He started every single Premier League game. And he's performing at such a strong standard. That, for me, is the most important aspect of Calafiori. It was the durability. From a quality standpoint, I know what this guy's capable. I felt last season, if Calafiori was available from the start to the end of the season, he could be in contention for the best left-back in the league. And this season, people are already starting to put him in that category of, he's looking like he could be the best left-back in the league. And Mikel mentioned it brilliantly afterwards, where he's like, where the game where you're up against an opposition team who are essentially saying they don't have any intention to press and apply pressure to our centre-backs. They're saying, Arsenal, we've came to the Emirates, we've had success against you many times, go and break us down. Having someone like Calafiori who can pop us into different spaces and is capricious gives a lot of value. And he's fantastic.
Sorry, just to really jut in, there's one phase of attacking football that I'd like to see us do a little bit more. And I have a suspicion we won't be able to see it until we actually recruit this specific quality. When I talk about the horizontal stretch and the vertical stretch, I can name you several players, for example, in the channels. We look at our Gyökeres, our Martinelli center forward cameos. We look at our Nani Madueke, even Saka to a certain degree. Their ability to go off the last line is something that we've seen. So we almost cover that vertical in the channel stretch. Saka, his ability to take balls out of the air, really, off a really big goal kick is insane. So we have that from the right. I would argue when Kai Havertz is fit, we have that ability. We've seen it against the biggest and the best teams with Kai, through the middle of the pitch. I don't really see that with the left, and I'm looking to see whether or not
sorry.
Yes,
sorry.
A certain Frenchman that I've been yelling for so long could really complete us in this regard. English. Sorry. It was the whole Antoine thing. Look, I love him, but this idea of the left having that flexibility to basically go long and do a West Ham on that specific side of the pitch is the last thing. And I do wonder if Nkapie can give us a band-aid to that pressure. And that specific intent is very important because we've seen Zubimendi stab passes from the center of this pitch. We know what Eze has given us centrally between the lines. Martin Odegaard, we've seen them switch sides. We've seen the center of the pitch be accessible from a horizontal fluidity standpoint. The last area or zone of the pitch that we aren't necessarily stoking or West Hamming it is kind of the left-hand side. And I do think if you open that variety, you're going to see like the complete version of the circle ultimately. And that's the only thing that I feel could be a trait thing that we miss. So I don't know if I'll solve it this season, but that's our last form, in my opinion.
Come on, Arteta Pulis. You can do it.
Good. He's so good.
Arteta Pulis, he wants him. On Calafiori's role within the team, Mikel said a lot of dynamism, sometimes a bit chaotic, but I think his dynamism and the spaces and the situations that he can create are very difficult to control for the opponent, especially against a team that is very well organised. You have to disrupt their organisation in order to create chances, and I think we've done that very well. Not to relitigate the conversations we had last season, guys, but, you know, maybe if you could go back in time and when we're complaining about the mid-block conversations, it's possible to go, okay, yeah, no, valid, and there's definitely things we could do, but Calafiori is not available. You got this bloke called Zubimendi coming in. You got a bloke called Gyökeres coming in. You know, a lot of the time it's Madueke. A lot of the time it's down to who you got. So, you know, and half the players are out. So yeah, there is a lot of optimism there. A lot of optimism in this podcast. We've got to critique somewhere. We never have. Let's move to some more praise then, because we're blindly positive. I sort of couldn't believe this stat. Goals for, as I said earlier, we are one behind Man City. Goals against, we've conceded 3 so far this season, which we can count, which is obviously the Haaland goal with, maybe arguably some poor defending, but then 2 set-piece situations, obviously with Szoboszlai, and off the second phase with Nick Voltemada. And I decided to have a little look and go back and see how many open play goals. Well, we've conceded 1 in the league so far this season. How many have we conceded with Gabriel and Saliba both available? I presume you might have seen this. 4.
Your tweet slapped.
In 2025, in the Premier League, with Saliba and Gabriel starting, Arsenal have conceded 4 open play goals in the Premier League. Haaland in September and February, that Jared Bowen goal, which was ridiculous, and the Mbeumo goal against Brentford in January. Rohan.
Yes.
We're quite good at defending, aren't we?
Sensational. But no, we just have 2 banks of 4 in it all game, and we're defending
4 centre-backs.
4 centre-backs, 5 DMs, 10 goalkeepers, everything. Yeah.
A partridge in a pear tree.
to give you more of a run-up, it's one of those things, and maybe this is we've got a phrase that keeps coming up. It's and the closest I can get is consistency bias, and I'm not sure that's a particularly good phrase. Let me know in the comments if you think you've got a better one. But it is this thing when something is good consistently, week in, week out, you not only get bored of talking about it, but it almost just goes by the by. Clean sheet after clean sheet after clean sheet after clean sheet after clean sheet. What's the record? 15 in the Premier League?
Yeah, about 15.
In this, if you get even close, and I will say this, if you get even close to that, let's say 16, 17, in this era of the Premier League, I'm sorry, that's a bigger achievement. I'm sorry. 20 years later, that's a bigger achievement, even if you don't break the record. And I think we could.
Well, I just want to go back to so every single coach who's coaching in the Premier League right now or in Europe who have played the game at a very high level, like I said, Iraola, who played in 2000. These guys are all saying the game is harder now because it's quicker. And look at the level of spending in the Premier League where you're seeing... I'm looking at some of the front lines that these bottom half table teams have. I'm thinking, my God, these are good. A lot of these players could put... Look at Everton's front line and some of the players they've got. You know, it would be really impressive. I think what... We take it for granted. You know, I've said this many times about Saliba and Gabriel. It's like their norm is so high that we just disregard it. Like when I rewatched the West Ham game back, and I'm thinking of, you know, like my top 5 players from the game, I didn't even mention Saliba, but Saliba was faultless. He was faultless in the game. Oh, granted, West Ham didn't offer much, but we do this every single game week where these two in particular, They are the cornerstones and the bedrock of this team in terms of how we've been able to have the platform of being so consistent season in, season out when they have been available as a pairing. Then you add David Raya there, then you add Declan Rice there. That becomes a significantly, structurally sound unit. And statistically, last season, even in our worst form, we're still operating with the highest defensive line in the league. Only Bayern Munich in Europe, according to Mark Stats, operate with a higher line than Arsenal. And this season as well, I checked the numbers as well from Mark Stats. Arsenal are way above everyone else in terms of defensive line height. And that's taking into account Anfield away from home, Old Trafford away from home, playing Newcastle at St James's Park, played Man City at home as well. We're built differently. And this team, like I said, I don't believe then there's a lot of coaching to some of the behaviours that they're showing now. It's all intuitive. They know the type of opposition they're facing. They know the type of centre forward. They know the type of winger, and they know how to respond. That's the way that they've been coached and programmed, and that's why I think players like Saliba, they say I feel I can become even better here in this coach because of the guidance and the learning that he's already been received. He was already a generational talent, but the level that these guys are now at, and what Mikel has been able to do along with the coaching setup, it's ridiculous, mate.
Yeah, and we've all known those people who are in their own rights, in their legend in their own lunchtimes, generational talents or whatever, but they don't apply themselves, so it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. And I think this is the thing. You read all these think pieces about Amorim's system and all this sort of stuff, and you say, yeah, but if your defenders don't communicate and they don't squeeze together, it doesn't matter. You could play 11 at the back. You could play 2 at the back. It doesn't matter if you don't all go together. That doesn't matter. And it's so much about the behaviours. And I think the thing with me, George, and we said this on the Timberscato, but it goes across our back line. It's the consistency of application of those good principles. It's consistently all moving together. It's consistently communicating. It's consistently, I think I said this maybe on a TCP Live, but I'll share it here. There is, Mikel has 2 reposts on his Instagram. One of them is this Spanish show, this stand-up show, and the other thing is a clip of Mourinho talking about defensive communication, which I just think is so apt and so kind of perfect. But it's all that stuff. It's if he goes, he's asking one of his centre backs to say, once Dele Alli leaves this zone, you should be shouting at him and saying, no, come back in this zone. It's all that stuff that actually, yes, we take for granted, but we take for granted because we're not there on the grass looking at, no, step in, step up, all those things. And there's so much work that goes in that we don't talk about because we're talking about the other areas of the pitch. But yeah, there's not loads to say really, other than they're brilliant.
The only thing I'll say is it's a story that I think Canon podcasters know quite a bit. And it was my solution to try and teach my own team about this, but it's not a given. And, when I was coaching with, some young kids and trying to teach them the concept of defensive principles and staying compact, I tied a string around the waist of every single one of my players in the back line and said that as I was kicking the ball in different scenarios, if the string breaks, do a lap. And it's this idea that when it is harsh, but it kind of, what it showed at the beginning was they were running a lot. But at one point, the kids just said, okay, let's go slowly. As soon as so-and-so goes up, we must make sure the string is lax. So we have to step together. If we don't, the string's going to break. That, in essence, is exactly what I was trying to teach them without telling them, because they won't realize it, so they needed to see it. And that is something that, was my own little, bringing in the flighting pilots into the training ground version of trying to get them to learn these concepts. But it is really the crux of what makes Arsenal brilliant. It's the idea when one player goes, the entire back line goes. And they don't ever leave somebody stranded. And that's really the point of it. And compactness is a very easy thing to understand and a very hard thing to implement, because you have to be one-minded about it. And if one person isn't focused on it, that's all it takes. And it really only takes 1 second. 1 second of chasing. And it's not even something that I think, people and fans appreciate, because Jose Mourinho is talking about this. And I promise you guys, I and Jose Mourinho are not geniuses for this. It's a very basic principle of defending. But again, the basics of football aren't always respected. And, I think this team respects it to a different degree. And it's not just the back line. It's the front line. It's the wingers. It's the way that we defend. And it's not a given that we've somehow managed to get these superstars to really care and buy into this philosophy. It speaks to Mikel's ability to motivate, because I've honestly not seen a team this consistent at it for this long. And, when people start to say things, and we say things like we are the best out of possession team in world football, we're due that praise. That is from our application, our commitment, and our desire to make sure that no one is left behind. And no one talks about that part, how hard it is to do it over the span of those 3 years. And that we've managed to get literal superstars to buy in to those things. Saka has no business respecting this. I'm sorry. Like, I love it. I just have to speak honestly. I've known so many people and strikers and forwards that are all about the glory of the output. I have not known a humility in the front line that we've seen for the last 3 to 4 years to act this way, and it's special.
And it matters. Like it matters in the modern game. Like it matters in the modern. Luis Diaz leaving Liverpool, I think is going to be one of the most underrated aspects of why things aren't quite working out for them at the minute, because of the application he put in off the ball. You can sneer at it and go, "Oh, who cares?" all you want, but it's the fact of life. Like, it's true.
Just look at Ousmane Dembele, Alex. If you look at Ousmane Dembele winning the Ballon d'Or, right? And why were PSG so good as a collective?
Probably the most famous clip of him in his Ballon d'Or winning season was that clip where he's out of possession. Yeah,
exactly. And we talk about the output. We talk about, for me, like, outside of Messi, the best false nine performances I've seen from a football player ever. What he was doing, but the work rate, and there's a lot of studies and there's a lot of data behind his intensity and his consistency. You as a centre forward, if you do that, the whole team follows you, and it's the ripple effect it sends. A player of Ousmane Dembele, who for me is a generational talent in terms of pure talent as a winger, he has everything, and then he is showing how important it is to do the hard yards and to work as a team, the togetherness, and it's so essential to the modern game, and you can't get away from it.
Yeah. And I think you don't. It's this consistency bias to keep going back to, but the fact that we have been doing this for so long, I can't remember a team doing this very often. It's amazing. Let's go to your questions. Thank you all so much for joining us on the podcast, first and foremost, but secondly, for giving us your questions. We are going to be asking questions on now from YouTube, X, Patreon, and there was something else. Discord. Thank you. So we're going to be sort of broadening that net for questions, just to get more of a sense of what people want to talk about, but also to get just more of your questions involved. However, if you want priority access to questions on the main podcast, you know where to go to join us on Patreon or as a YouTube member and get access to the Discord. There were lots of questions about Victor Gyökeres, which I want to talk about from one perspective, but also want to give a little preface with as well. One from Abs, which is how much influence does Gyökeres have in games outside of his goals? The biggest debate discussion plaguing our Discord right now. You can join our Discord, nearly 600 people in there now, which is amazing. Various questions, one from Michael on YouTube and various people on X. I do want to say, as a preface to this, and maybe I'll just throw it to you here, Rohan, the fact that we're having this conversation when, if you'd said to me, is this a good return from what you've seen from Victor Gyökeres when we signed him, or maybe when we were sort of in those conversations in the beginning of the summer, what are you expecting from Gyökeres? What are you hoping for? I'd say I'm about par in terms of a decent goal return. Of what is it, 3 and 6 or whatever it is. I've seen the application that I've wanted to see, like the intensity, the fact that he played, 3, I think he's the only player who played 3 90 minutes in the last 3 games, other than Raya. I've seen the flags that we've raised, and we've been over many times. We don't need to go over again. But I've been at par. So the fact that he is the only real talking point, really, of or is it quite working for him? I think is in many ways a credit to us in some ways. But talk to me about Gyökeres, because I think that West Ham performance, which was not his best, was a lot down to fatigue. That's really my feeling. But also maybe there's other meat on that bone.
Yeah, I think fatigue is a very important aspect to it. I'd say it's probably the most salient, because I think his performance against Olympiacos and against Newcastle are promising. I said on the pod where I don't mind my striker missing chances. I don't mind. Obviously, there has to be some balance to it. But as long as you are contributing in other aspects, I'm okay with it. But then again, there has to be a balance to it. I didn't think he was good against West Ham. I think it was objectively his worst game in an Arsenal shirt. Everything that was going to him, I thought Mavropanos had a really good game against him. Like, really good.
Were you at the game? Sorry to cut you.
Yeah, I was at the game.
How was the response?
Mixed. There were groans. and whatnot. But I think with the fact that we got the goal in the first half, it kind of, the fans are a little bit more lenient. If the game was at 0-0 and we were seeing certain things Gyökeres wasn't able to do, it gets a little bit messy. It does. And it did against, I remember the Leeds first half, there were a lot of groans of Gyökeres, and then he scores in the second half. I think with Gyökeres, I've looked at the timeline and some of the discourse and the space he's creating for others. I think, so there's two sides to this. I think with Gyökeres, when we're talking about, he's occupying two centre-backs, that's common practice in the Premier League for most teams. I don't want to be that guy. It honestly is. Go and watch the Premier League after the international break and go and look at, I don't know, who Bournemouth play. Evan Nilsson. Two centre-backs will be on him at most times. It's common practice. Centre-backs like to work in tandem, one going aggressive, one sweeping. And naturally, most teams have a front three, centre-forward and two wingers. So they want that additional man to give them that coverage to potentially deal with balls in behind. I don't think Gyökeres is doing a lot in that regard. Kai Havertz would do the same thing. What I do think Gyökeres is doing is the runs that he's making in the channels and the spaces that are opening up there. I think that is certainly benefiting the team. But when we're talking about pinning centre-backs, I think it's being overstated. And what you're seeing a lot are screenshots taken without context on X. So it's two sides of it. But I do think his channel runs, that's certainly creating space for others. And I do think that out of position wise, he's learning and he's getting better and better. But I have to be honest, I watched it back and he wasn't good. He was the worst player on the pitch for us. And that's...
He wasn't, but we've said many times that I think the Kai, and we have to be honest, as you say, the Kai Havertz situation is not helping him, and I don't think he would have played this many minutes if Kai Havertz was available. But yeah, George, I think that's a good distinction, and I'm glad you said it because I felt that before. The sort of he's occupying two. It's the occupation in the runs, which is I think is the key aspect, and his movement. I mean, talk to us about sort of your view of him. That West Ham game, I'm like willing to write off, to be honest. I think for someone who has not played at this intent, like you can look into the data, I don't have it to hand, but we've all seen those charts of intensity and the amount of minutes, etc. You go from Portugal to English Premier League. Like what he will be going through physically right now, and considering the amount of running he's doing and actually what he is doing, and the fact he's improved, I would say, in the press, and he looks a bit lighter to me actually on his feet than when he first came. I actually, for me, I'm more credit to him. But I'm willing to write that game off because it wasn't his best, but it really feels to me fitness related, a lot of it.
My question is that personally, I feel the faults that we've seen and the ability that we've seen are about what I thought of the player going in.
That's basically where I'm at, yeah.
I was very aware of this, and it's why I wasn't 100% into the signing. I have to be honest. I'm not going to switch and twist what I felt. I want to be fair that I think every signing deserves a 6-month period before you start to get too analytical with it. However, I have to be fair. If you're going to have repeated West Ham performances, and even, for example, the Olympiacos game, where he was objectively much better with his movement and his ability to pin center backs, what left me frustrated was, and what remains to be, a kind of reactive box movement. That ultimately, to me, has been the most frustrating part to it. Because when you have a look at what makes Kai Havertz manageable for certain people, is that, yes, he's pulled wide. Yes, he's been a better reference as a pinner. And I think Gyökeres is a better channel runner. Ultimately, they create differences in how they might, impact out of the box. But ultimately, Kai Havertz had that run post-January in which he was involved as one of our best players in the run-in. And Gyökeres simply has to match that if you want to be the starting number 9 for Arsenal Football Club. I don't care if you're Havertz or if you're somebody else. If you want to be the number 1, okay, that's the type of output that you've got to pair with whatever your additions are. And I fear people expected that. And I wasn't so sure that was as sure of a move for Arsenal. Now, I do think that Gyökeres will allow us to change games with a lot more frequency because he is such a different type of striker. And so the impact on his ability to win us points will be significant. I just don't know if it's in the same 90-minute criteria that a lot of fans will have it for. And when we're doing all of this, that's with the idea that he's a 90-minute starting number 9 for Arsenal Football Club. That is translating the numbers that he's got to in Europe. When you start quoting the best goal scorer in Europe, and you start doing those things. He was bought to be that. And I was like, I don't know if you should be expecting that in this league, in this team. That's unfair on him. And that's even beyond my perceived limitations of his. Like, that just was an unfair expectation. And I really don't know, mate, if we're going to be able to marry it. And I stick by the point that you said. He's been hurt by Havertz not being here, objectively. I think it'll go around in the other way. It'll ask questions, because when Kai Havertz is in, we're going to see two very different strikers. And I'm not too sure that Victor Gyökeres' type of striking is going to be something that we're going to face as much of, just naturally speaking. So I don't know if people are going to be able to separate fewer minutes, same impact, kind of, cognitive dissonance. The one thing I'll just say with Gyökeres is that guy's a worker, and I will always respect the type of work that he does and the buy-in that he's made, because that's also not a given. And his relentlessness was one of the major pros that we had highlighted on the scouting that will inevitably mean he'll be involved. So I never think we'll have a disengaged player. And from that perspective, I will never hammer a player who absolutely is giving his all, is doing work to stretch teams, and it isn't coming off in the standard sense. But I just think, no offense, that comes from us and our fans and our expectations of what we had to expect of him. And it's not his fault necessarily. So I won't kill him in that regard. I just think we objectively need to see more sample of him bullying the West Hams. He didn't do it on this occasion. It's not the end of the world. But after January, if we start to see a stretch of those mid blocks, we should expect him to dominate those game states with a lot more consistency. That's it.
And you do see it at the ground. He's relentless. You can't knock his application, his work rate, and his desire to be there for the team. I can't knock it. And for me, I was a little bit more positive on Gyökeres relative to you two guys, because I felt he's going to be okay. He's going to help Arsenal because he offers qualities in different areas. But at the same time, Kai Havertz not being there is impacting him for sure, because he's the one guy who's kind of being rinsed like a bar of soap right now. Everybody else is being managed in a much better way. But once Kai Havertz comes back, you've got really good competition there. And I can guarantee you, Mikel loves Kai Havertz. So when he is back, Gyökeres won't have as many opportunities to consist. Let's say he's having these sorts of performances. I'm not saying he's going to. Kai Havertz will start. I can guarantee that. Mikel Arteta loves Kai Havertz every single time he talks about him. I'd say he's probably one of his most favourite players in the team, genuinely. So it's interesting. I'm optimistic about Gyökeres, but at the same time, I think you're bang on the money there, George, in terms of what are our expectations. If you're thinking this guy is going to be, this record-breaking goal scorer for Arsenal, I've got news for you. It's not going to happen. But he can contribute and he can impact games in situations that we weren't able to have impacted that season. And for me, that's what's important.
Do you know what? Sorry, just to jump in. I think people's perceptions was that he was Dwight York and he's more Solskjaer. And he can be Solskjaer. He can be somebody to come on, finish games reliably. People have felt like he would be a Dwight York, a 90-minute goal machine that may not do tons of work outside the box, but will get you an inevitable goal. And, that transition, I think, would ultimately be brilliant if Gyökeres can do it, but it's about expectations. And I don't believe that Solskjaer didn't have moments. He was responsible for that treble-winning side. So it's just about understanding, do you buy the whole finishers comment? And how important is that in you getting over the line?
Yeah.
Especially when considering the fee as well, just to
absolutely.
That's kind of where I wanted to finish this with some quotes from Mikel. Firstly, there were some quotes basically going around saying how happy he is with Gyökeres, etc., which is post-game, and sort of people saying, look, this is the role he's playing, and I think there's validity in that. But I also will point you to a press conference, I think it was like a week or so ago, we said there's a way away from the ceiling, Gyökeres. And I believe that. I think a lot of the all-round centre-forward play, which is the stuff we've highlighted, Mikel can help him, which is why it was, a signing that made sense in some sense when you consider the price tag. And we always go back to it, like it's about the price tag, and as George is saying, it's about expectation. What are you expecting from what I expected, from the price we paid for the player that I thought? It's about where it is. I've actually, maybe the only thing that's massively shifted is probably my admiration just seeing him in an Arsenal shirt running as hard as he has, and probably that's the thing that's shifted really. But I really, really, really strongly feel that we're going to see a different Victor Gyökeres and a maybe even more effective in a different way Victor Gyökeres when we see Kai Havertz come back, because we're going to see a guy in different game states, and I think we might love him even more. So I think that's exciting. Let's come to another question on the Discord from Dinny, who says, question, sometimes you guys refer to mental profiles. Could you discuss some of the different mental profiles within the squad and how they can help or hinder how we perform? Well, Dinny, I don't know if this is exactly what you wanted, but I've created the Arsenal mental profile matrix, as I'm calling it. I've created 4 categories: leaders, mavericks, teammates, and killers. Leaders, mavericks, teammates, and killers. And lads, I'm going to come to you with a name, and I don't want an essay. I just need
A category.
I just need a category that you want to put them in. Those categories, just one more time for you, were leaders, mavericks, teammates, and killers. Just from a mental profile, not their football profile. In your mind, their mental profile. Rohan, I'll start with you. David Raya.
Leader.
George William Saliba.
Maverick.
You do one, Alex. You go.
Christian Mosquera. Teammate for now, but I'm aware, I think there's more of a leader in him than maybe he's being allowed. Well, he's 21. Yeah. But I think he's the captain for Spain. Ironically, I don't allow you guys to answer, and I've taken those privilege. Rohan, White.
Right now, my answer would have been different before. I'd say teammate now.
George Incapie.
I don't think we can even talk about whether we've seen him. I mean, teammate, we haven't seen him.
Yeah, teammate is the default.
We haven't seen him.
Rohan, he doesn't want to be ultra crepidarius, and that's important. Gabriel Rohan.
I think you should join in as well.
Oh, I was going to do the next one.
Yeah, you do. Okay, right. Gabriel, leader. Yeah.
Timber. I think Timber is a teammate, but I really don't use that in a pejorative sense. I think he's just a really, really strong squad member, and those people are very, very important. George, your lookalike? And I say that in inverted commas.
Maverick, in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
Calafiori. Miles Lewis Skelly, please, Rohan.
Teammate.
I
don't know, though.
I think he might be my first killer. He answered a question in not a press conference. It was like a one of those like Premier League things where they do it's like a media day type thing. And he said something like, who do you think would score the winning goal for Arsenal in the Premier League? And he went, me. And he was not joking.
Okay, I didn't know.
Like, he really wasn't. It wasn't like, Victor or Bukayo. He was like, no, like, I would score it.
Kind of goes back to that Ian Wright video you shared before. Do you remember on X where he's like, I want to play against the best players. I don't care.
I think,
mate, who goes in his debut season to the Bernabeu and just destroys everybody?
Change it to killer.
Killer.
My son.
Martin Odegaard, I think, has to be leader. Christian Norgard, Rohan?
I'd go leader. Not in the context of Arsenal, but I do think that this is a guy who's very intelligent, and he can. I think he could be a coach potentially, from what I've read about him.
George Ethan.
Ooh,
he's quite shy, isn't he? Though. The
teammate,
killer with that shot.
Teammate right now, but he is a killer in the making. Yeah. He's just a very quiet boy. You have to, when he feels like he arrives, he'll be a killer. But he's presently a teammate.
He feels like, to me, we had like Martinelli 22-23. It feels like there's going to be like a, do you remember that Ethan Nwaneri
maybe a
season?
Silent killer. Yeah.
And I think it could be 26-27. It might be this season, but I think it might be 26-27. Mikel Merino. I'm going to go with teammate. Nothing wrong with Mikel Merino. Martin Zubimendi, please, Rohan.
I'd go with leader. I'd actually go with leader for Merino as well, from a tactical sense. Arteta's mentioned he's the most astute tactically out of anyone in the squad, and that's a shock when you've got Odegaard there.
He's too
He's
nice.
also, I don't know, his center forward cameos. He could be one of the
mate,
clearest. His XG performance.
He's
it's
arguably
crazy.
a killer, yeah.
He's
But
arguably a killer.
We're talking mental profile.
I know.
Yeah, I think
because he doesn't come on even in Spain. He with minimal minutes. This guy produces output, and he is the definition of inconsistent total action. But one action, bang.
Bro,
He'll do it.
He dunked on Rudiger's head top in the semi-final.
Yeah.
Of
It's ironic. I don't.
Quarterfinal,
But yeah.
deck leader, obviously. Bakayo, interesting.
Killer.
Yeah, but sort of babyface killer.
I'd go Maverick.
Oh, mate, for me it's killer because just this guy, we have been robbed of knowing what he could be last year. He was on a mission, and I think he is still working himself back. When he's fit, this guy is going supernova. Truly, what he did last year and the path he was on with output, he's become a killer for me. And him taking the ball from Gyökeres is very significant. I love that. No, this is my team. Victor, go over there.
He's like,
okay, no.
I'm the franchise player here, mate.
I'm the captain now.
How was he doing left back shifts?
So, that he is probably my only clear killer in the squad. Killer first for me.
Interesting. Not Maverick. No son of Maverick.
He's got the Maverick in him, but to me, this is a guy that wants the responsibility. I will kill you. Give me the ball and I will kill you every bloody time. It doesn't even have to be output, but he will cut through a team and just kill you. I love him. I love him.
Because it's a very unique situation. I don't know. Like, I can't think of someone who's missed a penalty for England and come back and been or even just for their country, in such a significant situation as like losing a Euros over it and come back and become as good a penalty taker as they are. I can't think of another comparable situation.
He downloads packages.
Maybe Beckham, like in terms of, but that was a different situation.
Maybe not in the context of England, but I've mentioned him already. But Ousmane Dembele's had to go through a lot of lows before getting that high. To be fair to him, like big money signing when he went to Barcelona, missed big chance.
It's specific to it's specific to penalties.
Okay.
But I can't think of a penalty. Someone who has missed a penalty as a child in the Euros,
got
racially abused, and come back and been as good a penalty taker as he is.
Guys, do we remember also Arsenal where we were at and when he came in to affect play from left back the way that he did with so much consistency? Like, it was just this guy to me is a killer. Yeah, he is.
Saka loving over. Jesus teammate. Maverick.
Yeah, I could see him.
Maybe this version of Jesus, I'd say, to be
maybe a couple of years ago, teammate. Last few ones. Victor Gyökeres, that interview on a boat, killer. Seen that one?
Oh yeah, no.
Absolutely terrifying, in the best way. As a run,
Maverick.
Gabriel Martinelli, please, George.
He's a teammate now, but if you give him central spaces, he will kill you.
Last three, Trossard, Madueke, and Kai Havertz. I will take Madueke, and I will take Maverick.
Interesting. I'd say the other two are teammates.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I would actually highlight from this exercise, I think killers are something mentally that we probably lack the least out of everything in it. We actually have several Mavericks at this point. We have a lot of leaders. We have a lot of teammates.
You mean like the most?
Yeah, like the killers, I would argue there was only one, we even debated it, but Saka was killer. And maybe Gyökeres is like a killer mentality. I think there's very few killer first in this squad, just in general. And I think everybody will point to one.
Yeah, killer first is interesting because I'd say Gabriel is probably a killer, but he's probably a leader as much. But yeah, maybe we need a killer.
Maybe Gabriel is a killer really when he's in the box. You know what I mean? Like,
I find like we're squinting to apply that profile. Where I honestly don't know. Like, I don't have a Salah. I don't have an Isak. I don't have a killer in the squad. In fact, we would argue that like the beauty in this squad is how the team supplies the goals necessarily. But yeah, I don't know. That killer first mentality is something that we might slightly lack, in the squad.
Great stuff, Alex. Great content. Just
Thank
put
you
that
so
out.
much. That's your clip, MJ. You're welcome. Wunmi Adesina says on Patreon, how many players in our current 11 get into the Invincibles?
Saka, easily.
Head of Ljungberg then.
Yeah, I think so. That and respectfully, by the way, that's the only one that I think is easy. The rest, oh god.
I'll take Calafiori out for
Saliba.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's
It's
the
hard,
team?
isn't it? The problem is the
Mate.
discourse from this is that we've not won anything.
Oh,
right?
Ashley. Yeah. Oh god. Declan.
People are going to hate. People are going to hate this. I'd put Raya in over Lehman.
I was thinking about that. To be honest.
I'm sorry. People will hate that, and I don't care. That
Would
goalkeeper.
you have Declan over Gilberto Silva?
That is tough. If Declan had won a Premier League, I would.
This is the thing, isn't it? It's all contingent on winning something, isn't it?
I think Saka's my only one that I'm guaranteed now, even without a Premier League. Like he deserves.
Yeah,
that.
Saka's in.
And I think Saliba is like very close for me. I don't know if I'm guaranteed on it, but he's a much better player than Kolo Touré. But that partnership needed a Kolo Touré.
Okay, yeah, for sure. But then that's what maybe if we just do it from a pure quality standpoint, like I'd put Saliba in over Calafiori.
I know, it's just Kolo Touré made that work because Ashley Cole was just gone. He was doing everything in the back there. So yeah, I'd say Saka now for sure. We win a Premier League, I'm willing to put Saliba and Declan in there, to be honest with you.
To be fair, when we're doing like stylistic comparison, Kolo Touré is more Gabriel than Saliba.
He is.
So
he is
as well.
But Saul was like a really good defender too, wasn't he? Like I mean, in the partnership, he would need an expansive person like Saliba as well.
That's true. That's true.
2 more questions. Let's go with... we have one on the Discord. Another one on the Discord. Yes, from Cole, who said, do you think we see a Ben White sale this summer if he can't regain his form and fitness? It's a really sad one, and I personally hope he does light it up again.
That guy needs a Premier League. He deserves one. Like, if Ben White is not able to sustain, a level of consistency from a fitness standpoint this season, but we win the league for him, like win the league and he gets to be involved, I'd be like, Ben, all your work, we've got this league for you. And then I would say, you know what, probably a good time to move on for sure. Which is sad, mate. This guy's consistency since he's came to the club at centre back, at right back, we ran him to the ground due to the unavailability of other players.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, he's been fantastic.
I'd go as far to say, like, I always defend the club from a medical standpoint and try to provide context. He is the one player I will say Arsenal let down and actively injured. Actively risked him. And I understand we didn't have anybody else, but we actively, I would think, lowered his career in terms of how we used him. That was a really difficult thing for me to see. You could see that guy was strapped. The amount of times he was strapped and played through injury because we had no one else.
Even this first season, I remember the back end of that campaign. Do you remember when we played Spurs and we lost 3-0? We didn't play Ben White because we felt, okay, we're going to need him for one of the last couple of games to secure one win to get Champions League. And we thought, we can't do it at Spurs. Try and get him going at Newcastle. And he was operating on one leg. It stemmed all the way back then. So
I love him too, so it's tough for me to do it. But yeah, I do think that we let him down personally.
Yeah, I think he could be the sale. I think maybe I'd be like, in like February, March. We've got a long way to go in this season.
Yeah,
I do feel physically like again, I'm similar to the insurrection. This is very pause worthy, so just please listen to what I'm saying. He's been gifted with his body. And I do think he has a really incredible athletic frame that if he gets back, I think he could, I think he can massively
That's the
contribute
thing right
for
now,
us.
isn't it? That Olympiacos game, I'm like, I don't care how he played. It's just good he's got minutes under his belt.
Yeah, just get him some minutes, get him going, because this guy, athletically, he's incredible. Final question from Ryan on X at Ryan 3090981244. Fair enough, Ryan. If you had the golden ticket to interview Mikel and one of the players, and one of the players in separate interviews, and they couldn't give you PR answers, which player would you pick, and what would you ask to both Mikel and that player?
I've got mine. I'll go to Mikel. Right, Mikel. No beating around the bush. Why did you play Rob Holding in the back end of 22-23?
Why you stole mine?
What's it?
Yeah, it literally was that.
Why? I'm not saying we would have won the league, but why did you do that? That's what I'd say.
Okay, well, I'm going to
Mine to Mikel would be what exactly happened in the windows between summer 2023 and summer 2025, where we, not to use George's phrase, but what was the situation?
Killing me.
Walk me through what happened and explain like what your situation was, what you had to say to the press, like who was offered, who didn't we take, who was blocking it. Yeah,
George's,
that would be
both
my
of
question.
George's
Killing
questions
me.
are gone.
Literally.
Oh, that was your question. Sorry.
Yeah. Why didn't we buy a
sorry.
forward in 2024, Mikel?
No, it would be that. Because I also think Mikel's answer would be like incredibly revealing. I don't know this for a fact, but I can't imagine. He does not feel like to me the kind of guy who culturally would throw anyone under the bus. So I suspect there's some things we don't know that are like, oh my god.
Okay, let me change it up. I would say I'll ask a player, and I would say, what is it about Mikel for you, Bukayo Saka, that makes him the best manager in the world, and why you would trust your career and your legacy knowing you could do whatever you want in world football for that to be with him?
You get both, mate. That was in the question. So I'm gonna do my player one. I would ask Miles and Timber possibly if you run me through a Mikel Arteta 1v1 masterclass, what does he say? Like how does he teach you to be so consistent? Like what are his fundamentals? What are his key principles? What does he keep drilling into you? I'd be super interested in that.
I'd go with, back to the theme of centre-backs, I'd ask Big Gabby, were there actual links? Were those links to Saudi? Were those links to Saudi legit, and were you considering it? And is that why you were taking out the team for a bit? And I'd ask Saliba.
You only get one. George? Your Mikel question.
My Mikel question. I was the guy at finishers. Did you like that comment? No, I would just ask him, where do you feel you have to grow as a manager? Not what the narrative and what people would say, but like, where do you feel like, where's your ceiling at, and how do you see that?
Especially tactically, because I wonder,
100%.
like, is there something tactically that you are missing? That's what I'd ask, if I did.
We'll finish there. Thank you for joining us on the main podcast. As always, make sure you turn your notifications on wherever you are to make sure you don't miss our episodes. This week on the international break, we've got TCP Live. We'll have a rewatch.
We will.
We'll have a rewatch available for you. We've got loads of other content coming out. What have we got coming out, George? Loads of stuff.
Got a
Yeah, we've got
mailbox coming
Tactics
up as well.
Corners, we've got Scouted.
Mailbag. Oh, yeah. Come on.
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Make sure you drop a comment below. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you think about the show. Thank you, my boys in white.
Thank you.
Thank you, good sir.
Much. And thanks so much for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Inspiration.